Hello everybody, it's Keith. Help support the Northeast scene and declare yourself a member today. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or your podcast medium of choice. Rate us and leave a review. Every little bit helps. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It has every podcast episode plus other exclusive content. Like and leave a comment. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the NE Scene. Also, continue to write us at northeastscene@gmail.com. We want to share your experiences as well. And now, here's the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Northeast Scene Podcast. This is Keith.
And Tommy.
It's Monday night, and you know what that means. We are here to bother you once again. That's what we do. We are professionals at that.
Consistent bothering.
Yes. It's our job. Tommy,
Yeah.
how's it going with you?
Pretty good. I actually was really excited. Today is now, I stopped Sunday morning. I haven't been vaporizing at all, so I threw the Juul out and everything, so I feel really good.
So you stopped?
Yeah, completely.
That was going to be my question for you.
Yeah.
So you actually threw the Juul out and everything?
Yeah, so you know how I am with money. So if I had to start again, I'd have to go buy a whole new kit. And
oh, that's perfect.
So I was like, there's no way I'm going to go out and throw $30.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm fucking doing it. So I was like, here's an easy way to do it. That's what I did. You know what? When I quit smoking, I was such a, this is like that, the way your brain thinks when you're like addicted to stuff like that. But like cigarettes aren't nearly as strong as people make it out to be. But I know when I was drinking, and I would smoke, I've done like gross stuff before where I've like dropped a cigarette on a floor, like in a crappy bar and picked it up and smoked it.
Yeah, I used to pick up cigarette butts out of my backyard when I had one, when I was like still high, and I would light them and re-smoke them. It was gross.
So you know what I did? And this is like my swan song with cigarettes was I bought a pack and I smoked Pall Mall Blue.
Yeah.
So I took a pack and I smoked one night like outside where I was just having cigarettes, I'm listening to them. That's what my routine was, is I would, put my headphones on and just put music on and listen. And a lot of times I just took my iPod out and shuffled through stuff and listened to old songs and kind of just stared off at the sky. So when I had my fill of cigarettes and I was like, that's enough. I took the pack and I put them on the ground. And then I peed on them because I knew that was gross enough for me not to go in the garbage can later and pull them out.
Now, you peed on them. Did you have to pick them up and throw them in the trash?
Great question. I did. I did have to pee on them and touch them. So,
dude.
Yeah.
Did you wash your hands after?
Of course. No, I immediately went inside and touched my daughter's face.
That's all I'm going to be able to think about now when I see you.
Is me peeing, like my touching my, like it's like what's the Seinfeld thing, like the unclean, like because he dropped the toilet
the pizza dough.
Oh no, I was thinking about the toothbrush when he drops it. Yeah. He accidentally knocks hers in the toilet and then
it's gonna be like that.
Yeah. You're just gonna have to, every time you touch my hand, you're gonna have to like immediately use hand sanitizer.
Yeah, well, we have to do that now anyway, so it's all good.
That's true.
I'm such a fiend with the Juul that I held on to the stick that you put the cartridge in.
Yeah.
Because I have one. I was like, this thing costs $30. I don't want to throw it away. And then I found one in an airport, in LaGuardia Airport. Yeah. So I was like, all right, a backup. Now I can have two in case, because it's like a panic when that battery runs out and you can't hit it. So I still have the two sticks, and I have them in a drawer I don't usually go in. So sometimes I open it and I'm like, but I haven't gone back. But it took me a while to quit. Even when I quit, I would still take hits and I would still do it occasionally. But eventually I just completely stopped.
Yeah, see, I think the thing is I'm not around anybody that does it. I don't know anybody that does it except for like at the skate park. There's a
Hmm.
couple guys that do it, but I'm not going to walk up to them and be like, "Hey man, let me hey, I know there's a really contagious pandemic going around, but let me just go ahead and put my mouth on that thing that you obviously just put your mouth on." Like so.
Yo, that's what saved me. I went for coffee with a friend near my house, and he pulled out the jewel and was hitting it. And instinctively, I was instantly going to be like, yo, let me get a hit of that. But then I
Uh
remembered that there's a global pandemic, and I was like, oh, probably not a good idea. So that saved me.
That's good because it's been you know what's really I was never like a carry it around all day kind of guy.
Hmm.
Um, so I would have it downstairs with me, and then periodically, like if I had a really rough class, I would take like a puff or so. Um,
Yes.
but it mainly lived in a drawer upstairs in my bedroom. So Sunday night, I stopped Sunday morning. I literally took it to the skate park with me, and skated Sunday morning, and then threw it out. It was like, all right, I don't have it anymore. Sunday night getting to bed was hard, but
Yes.
that was about it. I think that's what my real like that's my crutch. Like that's when I used it the most was when I was like in bed laying down, like
Yes.
watching TV. Like I watch the same like 8 TV shows before I go to bed. So, you know,
Did you get to try mango cartridges before you stopped?
I didn't get to try those.
Oh,
However, I did find a place online that had different flavored ones, but they were like the disposables, you know, like they didn't have like the pods. Um,
yeah, I don't like those.
they were like, and they were more expensive. They were like $9.
Every other knockoff vape thing would make me feel like shit.
Oh, this one was really good. I like this one a lot, but they were like really hard to get.
Well, now we're out. We're done. That's it.
Yeah, and like I said, like with the with me spending money is such a huge thing. I'm always like, so concerned with I got to make sure I save all my money and
We know you can't spring for Spotify Premium.
no,
You're buying bootleg mics on eBay and then having to return them
I bought pants this weekend
at Costco.
at Costco. Yeah.
Now, well, hold on. When you went to go buy them, did you think about all of our conversations and the conversation with Romy and hesitate at all?
No. So here's what happened. I don't go to the store without getting into like a whole thing. Like I've talked about it on here before, but like I don't have my spleen, so like my immune system's not really great. So if I get COVID, it's going to be kind of disastrous, especially with my history of smoking. It's probably not a great idea either. But Kelly goes to everything like Costco and the supermarket and stuff like that. But she went to Costco and she was walking through and she said, "Hey, don't you need a new pair of sweatpants?" And I was like, "I do."
Wait,
And
you need a new pair of sweatpants?
yeah, I have a.
Meaning you have an existing pair of sweatpants that are no longer functional.
They're functional, but I was drinking coffee in them and I spilled, they're like light gray and I spilled coffee on them and they have like this permanent, it's just like stained in the front and it looks like a weird yellow stain. So it kind of looks like I peed my pants. So she was like, you have to get rid of those. So, of course I didn't. I just rolled them up in a ball and put them back in the drawer so she can't see them. But, when she was walking through Costco, she was like, "Hey, they have Puma sweatpants here and they look nice and they're like $13." And I was like, "Yeah." So she just, with everything like that, she always just sends me a picture on her phone. So she was like,
So
"Hey,
now you're buying pants and sweatpants at Costco.
yeah."
Don't you see that your life is spiraling out of control right
buy,
before your very eyes?
I buy my socks there. I, I,
Well, socks is fine.
I
I
buy
buy socks at Target.
I buy Puma socks there. I buy their Kirkland brand underwear is called 32 Degrees. They're amazing, dude. They're so good. And I that's what I asked for Christmas. So the pants I got, I don't even have them. Kelly said they're my Christmas present. So
Dude, Christmas is like 3 months away.
you don't understand. You don't understand. My closet is literally, she has present. She starts buying for people in May or June.
What?
Yeah, dude.
Wow. Well, that's good because it takes the pressure off.
She's like a bargain hunter too. So she's always like one of these people that as soon as she gives the gift, it's like the most tacky thing in the world to do, but she gets so excited about it. She'll be like, "You won't believe what I paid for that shirt." Like, yeah, it's a gift, so don't tell people. Like, like you shouldn't just like brag about, "Hey, that shirt was only $12." It's like, stop. Like, people don't want to hear that about something you just gave to them.
Folks, tonight we're going to be talking to Nathan Ellis of the Casket Lottery and Coalesce. Can you believe that? But geez, those two bands, and Coalesce is right up there in my top 2 of greatest metalcore bands of all time with Botch, and they're probably the heavy band I go back to the most.
I think that's one of those CDs that I kept in my car. Like when I cycle through CDs in my car, because I do have a CD player still. I don't have an MP3 thing for my car. Mm-hmm. So I just listen to CDs, and I change the CDs out in that wallet, like, I don't know, like every 3-4 months, and Give Them Rope has never left.
Yeah,
wallet. Never.
I listen to Functioning on Impatience a lot, and that 73 Degrees / something else EP.
Yeah.
Those 5 songs are just, they're my Led Zeppelin 2 or 3 or whichever one people like.
Do you remember the one they did the whole Led Zeppelin album?
Yeah.
What was that?
I think that's why I like Led Zeppelin.
There's Nothing New Under the Sun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really? You didn't get into Led Zeppelin in like grade school or high school?
No, classic rock never really took with me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I do like Led Zeppelin though. They're one of the few classic rock bands that I actually enjoy. I'll never put them on, but I wouldn't turn them off either.
Yeah, I actually, when I'm flipping through the radio stations, like, this is actually one battle I had the other day with the girls in the car, and I was like, you know what? You guys are right. The 6-year-olds win. There was 2 songs on. One was Van Halen's Jump, and the other one was Led Zeppelin. I don't know the name of that fucking song, but whatever.
Yeah.
So that the girls were like, I was like, all right, which one do you want to hear? And they both immediately were like, we want Jump. And I was like, you know what? Actually, I choose Jump too. Like, it's a better song. It's a way better song.
Jump is better than that Led Zeppelin song for sure.
Yo, did you this is like, I probably old. I mean, by the time this airs, Christ, is old news. But like, I didn't know. I knew who Eddie Van Halen was, and I, obviously listened to Van Halen growing up. But like, I wasn't like a huge like getting into Van Halen kind of thing. Like, and there was a bunch of articles that came out after he passed away. I didn't know this. I think it was 2 years in a row or 3 years in a row. He won like the whatever county, I guess Santa Monica County. Piano competition as like a 13, 14, and 15-year-old. Yeah, Eddie Van Halen was like a really, really great piano player, and he admitted this was the whole point of the article. He admitted in the article, like, I don't know how to read music, so I would just memorize these like, fairly long pieces, and people would always go, that was such an amazing interpretation. And he's like, I don't know how to fucking play this song right. Like, I would just improvise portions of it because I couldn't sight read.
He's like a genius. He changed the landscape of modern rock music. And I knew that somewhat, but I don't really listen to Van Halen. But hearing everything after his death, you just see that his influence is massive.
Oh, yeah. And it was like, actually, there was a bunch of people that posted stuff right after he passed. And I was like, clicking through one of them. It was an old video. God, that guy's like a political person now. But he was like an MTV reporter. I forget his name, Chris something. And he was like going through Eddie Van Halen's studio that he has built at his home. And he has all these old, like, I guess DAT recordings, like the digital audio tape stuff. And he was like going through it, and he was like pointing at this wall, and he's like, we have a ton of stuff recorded in here. And he's like, and periodically I just go through it. And he was like, I was doing stuff from, I think it was right after they wrote 1984. He was like, we went back to that period, and I started going through some of the recordings. And he goes, that's where, remember the piano song that they wrote, Right Now?
Yeah.
That was with Hagar. He was like, that song was written in 1985. He was like, that was on one of these old DAT tapes and it had just been shelved because we couldn't find a place for it.
Wow.
Can you imagine writing that song and then being like, yeah, fucking throw it on the shelf? Like, really?
No.
Like
that song is synonymous with Crystal Pepsi in my mind. Because that was the song for the Crystal Pepsi ad campaign.
Oh yeah, shit.
Look up the commercial; it's very inspiring.
I
think because of that song.
Yeah, that's a great song. God damn it.
Oh yeah, yeah. One night they were talking about them on the Stern Show. I don't know. This was like 6 years ago, so I got really high and stayed up and listened to all their records, or like the big ones. I don't remember if they were good or not, but I hope they were.
Slippery When Wet is really good. For Under Carnal Knowledge or for I think that one that is really, really good. And then 1984 is just fucking. That's one of those records I remember my sisters just having, and it was just like constantly like it sat at the front of the record pile because my sisters always played it.
Yeah. Well, rest in peace, Eddie Van Halen. You will be missed.
Yeah, was he on Stern a lot? I kind of remember this now.
No, I think only once back in the day, but David Lee Roth has been on a couple times. Sammy Hagar's been on a bunch of times. And Sammy Hagar would always tell a lot of good stories about that band. I always enjoyed those interviews.
Yeah, David Lee Roth. Remember he had the radio show for a little bit in the morning?
Yeah.
Remember
that was bizarre.
That was a really bizarre time because I remember I actually turned it on the one day and he had a really cool, his story was awesome. But in my head, I'm going like, how much material does he really have? Like he's lived a really cool life, but he was telling a story. His father is a physician at a prison in California for the California penal system. I don't know which prison. But David Lee Roth is also an EMT. He's like a certified EMT. Like he
would talk about that a lot. I think the one time I listened, he was talking about that.
Yeah.
And for being David Lee Roth, I figured there had to be better stories. Yeah. I mean, even with our show, every week I'm like, the fuck are we going to talk about? But somehow we always pull through it and keep it moving.
Yeah, you would think spending 30 years in one of the biggest bands in the fucking world, you would have something cooler to talk about.
He probably can't talk about the coolest stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. He's got one of those non-disclosure agreements, and he had to sign his life away.
A lot of stuff probably went down back in the day, but
I'm sure.
We're going to talk to Nathan Ellis now of the Casket Lottery and Coalesce. So here he is. Enjoy. All right, folks. Now we're here with Nathan Ellis. Woo! Nathan, how's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This is extremely exciting for us because we love the Casket Lottery, and of course, we love Coalesce, and it's going to be a good time.
Awesome.
So let me ask you right away, Casket Lottery, did they play a gig recently?
Yeah, we did actually. We played Saturday night at it's this totally temporary venue here in Kansas City called Lemonade Park, which is basically it's the alleyway behind a couple restaurants, and they have it set up, socially distant with picnic tables 10 feet apart, and we played on the back of a flatbed truck, basically, that had it set up. And
wow.
It was kind of wild because just past what is Lemonade Park is a giant empty parking lot. So we're playing to, I think there was probably 100 people in total in this giant fenced in area, but all you can see is this vast empty parking lot. So it was, it was a little awkward, but yeah, we did it. The first show of the year. And it was a little awkward, but we got through it.
That must feel incredible because shows are such a impossible commodity now. Like they don't exist, and you got to do it.
Yeah, you take what you can get, right?
Yeah.
We were excited to get asked to do it. It was a benefit show for one of the best, most important local venues here in town called Record Bar. Mm-hmm. And honestly, when they were setting it up and we got invited, there was no hesitation. Anything to support a venue in a time like this. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. They don't know where rent's coming from for November, so
Yeah.
so we were very excited to be able to help contribute in that way for sure.
Yeah, that's great. And I wonder about that too. When is live music going to happen again? Will it happen again? What are all these venues doing? I mean, it would be a real shame if a lot of the great venues out there just ended up shutting down.
Yeah, and a lot of them have, already. Some of my favorite venues from across the country. I know that Great Scott in Boston's already closed, and and there's a handful of venues that are just hanging on at this point. And it's not like January we're going to be good to go. It's going to be a minute. So especially for like a band like us, like I said, we're playing in this basically this alleyway that leads into a parking lot. We want to play in these smaller rooms where everybody's elbow to elbow and sweating and spitting on each other. And God, I can't even picture it now. It's going to be a minute.
Yeah, like Tommy, imagine going to an All Else Failed show in the age of COVID. Like people just falling on top of you, crawling on top of the crowd. It doesn't seem like it could ever happen again.
It's so far removed from our current reality that it is going to be, that first time back is going to be amazing. But again, it's one of those things that, when is that going to be? And I keep looking up things about like, is there going to be a vaccine available, and how far off is it? How effective is it going to be? Like, it's very, like, depending on where you look, you hear so many different varying things. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And well, Nathan, let's take it back a little bit. So, did you grow up in Kansas City?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I moved to town here, and I think I was about 10 years old when I moved to Kansas City. Before that, I lived in a smaller suburb of Columbia, which is a university town here in Missouri, Columbia, Missouri. The suburb was called Midway. But yeah, I've spent all my important years here in Kansas City. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your background. What was your family life? What was it like growing up around there?
Well, so my dad was a Missouri State Highway Patrolman. He's retired law enforcement now. So I did move a few times because of that. My mom always did like clerical work around office buildings and stuff like that. I have an older sister who's about 5 years older than me. So she's the one who kind of got me started in interested in music, bands like The Cure and Morrissey and Susie and the Banshees and stuff like that. But really, when I moved to Kansas City is when I started skateboarding, and I met all my friends through skateboarding, and of course, then it was sharing tapes, and getting into Minor Threat and Fugazi and all the Discord stuff, and then eventually like local Kansas City bands like Boys Life and Giant's Chair and Shiner and Coalesce.
Did you ever get to see Giant's Chair? They're just awesome.
Many times, yeah. I mean, we played with them not too long ago. They're still kicking. They put out a new record last year too.
Oh, really? See,
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. That's awesome. Now I've got something new to check out. Yeah, they're classic. Shiner too.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and they're still rolling. They just put out a new record. They actually played that Lemonade Park about a month ago, the local socially distant venue that I was just talking about. So they just played that here a month ago. I think that they just played new record stuff, and yeah, they're still crushing.
Dude, I totally forgot about that new Shiner record. I'm not listening to as much music because I used to always listen to music when I was walking somewhere, getting on the subway, getting to the destination. And now that that's not really a thing anymore, music has taken a plunge. So I'll just I'll cram it in on weekends. So tell us about the scene in Kansas City. Now, back in the day when I heard Coalesce and Kansas City as a kid, I just imagined like wheat fields and long drives and that type of thing. In Bucks County, where we grew up, it's very suburban, shopping malls, strip malls, VFW halls to go to shows, heavily suburban like that. So what was it like in Kansas City?
pretty much the same. Kansas City is a city, and I think it's one of the largest sprawl cities there is in the U.S. because there is such a vast sprawl of suburbs all around Kansas City. I mean, it's kind of giant. But to your point, to get here, of course, for touring bands, you are driving through cornfields and long drives to get here. If you're, routing a tour and you're hitting Kansas City, odds are your next show is Denver, which is 10 hours away, or Chicago, which is 8 hours away. So, it's, we're kind of, in that spot, what they call flyover country. But
I always think of what it looks like. Do you know the cover from Boy's Life, Landfalls and Departures?
Sure.
Or Departures.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I always think of when I think of like Midwest. I'm always like, oh, just an open field and a windmill off in the distance with like flowing grain below it.
I mean, wherever that picture was taken, it was 30 minutes from here. You know what I mean? Like you throw a rock and it was that direction, So that exists here too, for sure.
So around what age were you skateboarding and starting to discover all the hardcore and punk bands?
Well, I really started skating probably around 13, but I really got into the music scene probably around 14, 15. That's when I started going to shows and had friends in bands and stuff like that. I started playing in my first band at the age of 15. That's when I first saw like Neurosis, or some of these bands that blew my mind and changed my life. At 15.
Yeah, Neurosis is one of those bands that changed a lot of musicians' lives, I think. I know some friends of mine in bands, they always cite Neurosis as like, that's one of the bands that changed things.
Well, and they were different. So, all of all of the bands that I'd seen before Neurosis seemed like other skate kids from other towns. It was like all these other kids who just seemed like my friends, but they came from Chicago with their band and played. And then Neurosis rolled into town, and they came in a giant school bus and with all their wives and kids and dogs, and like played in this small room with scaffolds so they could like shoot their projection behind them. They were scary, they were like, they were a completely different experience than other hardcore kids,
I was at a show where they played, I think I was 16 or 17, but I wasn't even close to being able to comprehend it at that time. Mm-hmm. Like Candiria went on before them, and I watched them, and that's all I was listening to at the time. And then I think I stood outside for the rest of the time. And you know what? I wish I hadn't.
No, you missed it.
Yeah,
it was awesome, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And so, what was the first band you were in?
So I was in a couple different bands. There were different variations of like Helmet or Giant's Chair, Boys Life, Kill Creek kind of bands. Mm-hmm. Just, no-name high school bands that never did anything. The first band that I ever actually joined that did anything was Coalesce, and that was when I was about 17 years old. So
you were 17 when you joined that band?
Yeah.
Jesus. I can't even imagine that, because to this day, I listen to their music and I'm like, how? Why? Like, what? How? Walking into that situation, you must have been pretty skilled walking into that band and being able to hold your own.
Well, the interesting thing is I'd never played bass before joining Coalesce. I was a guitar guy. So
what?
And I'd played shows with Coalesce with my other bands, and I knew those guys, pretty well. And I, hopped in the van with him and gone to shows out of town and gone to festivals out of town. And so like we knew each other, and I was around. So when Stacy decided that he wasn't interested in playing with Coalesce anymore, Jess called me and said, "Hey, do you want to come play bass?" And I had already enrolled in, I was just going to a community college as soon as I graduated. But as soon as I got that invite, I got my tuition money back and bought bass equipment and spent, the rest of the time in the van.
And I have to say, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I appreciate it too. In hindsight, it was kind of a scary move, and of course, my parents were a little hesitant, but they always just thought, "Oh, he'll do this for a year or two, and then get back to school." And I just, never did.
Yeah. Were they supportive of you playing music and touring? My parents were. I was on a couple tours with a band selling merchandise, and I was in bands and out there, and they were always supportive. Plus, they didn't want to pay for me to go to college. So when I decided to drop out, they were like, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, they were supportive. They were supportive, when I was 15 and started playing in bands in my basement, and it was my house that was always the loud house. So, yeah, they were always down with that. And looking back, like some of those decisions, I think, I can't believe that they went in my favor like that. Like I remember calling my mom from out of town, and this was before I was in Coalesce. I just hopped in the van with them, and they thought I was in like Omaha or Wichita. They knew I went out of town for some shows with Coalesce, and I called them and I was like, "No, I'm in Canada. I was in Toronto, and I didn't even have a coat, and it was snowing. And my mom's like, "What the hell?" But they were always cool with it. Yeah,
yeah. That's how I convinced my parents to get me a cell phone in 2002. I was like, well, I'm going on tour and you're going to want to be able to reach me, so you should buy me a cell phone. And they were like, okay. Joining Coalesce, you joined around 98, I think.
Yep.
Right before they were going to record Functioning on Impatience.
Yep.
So let's talk about that. Now that is right up there as one of the metalcore all-time greats for me. It's a record I go back to time and time again. It's my Led Zeppelin 2 or 3 or whichever one people
people pick at this point.
Whatever the most classic one is, that's this Coalesce record to me. So let's talk about recording that.
Sure.
Set the stage for us.
Well, that was the first project that I was contributing on. Before that I had recorded like the Get Up Kids split, the Boy Sets Fire split. I think we did a Black Sabbath cover for the Hydra Head split series. And then we also re-recorded 002 songs. And so like I had recorded all of those songs with him, but I didn't have any part in writing any of that stuff. That was all just kind of, Jess putting the songs together. But Functioning was the first time where he and I were like bouncing ideas back and forth and coming up with song structures and all the riffs and parts together. So that was my first experience really writing with Coalesce, and it obviously working with Jess, who's just kind of bonkers out of his mind, mad scientist guy, influenced all my writing moving forward, like even to this day.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what kind of influences were you guys working with? Because Coalesce is just an incredibly unique band. There's not much else out there like it.
Yeah, it's funny. Like if you ask Jess back in the day, and when we're working on Functioning, he'll say like, "Oh, this just sounds just like Metallica," and I'm like, "No, it really doesn't, dude. Like I don't know what you're hearing, but like he just always thought, oh, I'm just ripping off Metallica or Pantera," and I'm like, yeah, I mean it's probably like how you're envisioning it, but like what's coming out is something completely different.
Yeah.
And so I would say like those were definitely Jess's influences. Metallica was like his number one always. But then we would play with all these local Kansas City noise bands and Chicago noise bands and bands like Craw or there was a couple local versions of Craw and other just noisier bands like Glazed Baby and Quitters Club and bands like that, Iron Right Mangle. And so like that noisy influence just kind of mashed together with thrash riffs is kind of what Jess was working with. And then what happened was a completely different thing,
Yeah, so that's when the truly unique stuff seems to come out, when you're mixing different sounds, different genres, different influences, and it just kind of bubbles out into this unique thing.
Yeah, and I don't think, he could write any other way.
Yeah.
And of course, I came in with a completely different way of writing, and that just kind of messed it up even further, I fucked up his vision even more. Just oh, does this sound like Metallica? Of course it doesn't. It's something stupid, but it worked in a Coalesce song. So, and I was just a 17-year-old kid trying to contribute and come up with anything that would impress him, honestly.
I think that's amazing that you did that at that age, and mission accomplished, because every instrument, from the voice to the guitar to the bass to the drums, it's just all crisp, perfect sounding recording. Everything really stands out on its own. Like that bass riff where you just let it ring in the beginning of a new language.
Oh yeah.
Like I can just hear it right now in my head.
Yeah, it's been a minute since I heard that. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, just that. Do you ever go back and listen to your own music?
Sometimes. Yeah, I mean, I listened to Coalesce Ox record not too long ago, and it had been a minute since I did that. And I go back and listen. Of course, when you're working on a record, like we just finished that Casket Lottery record.
Yes.
That's like, that is just such a part of your life for, going on a year now.
Yes.
Like revisiting mixes and demos and all that stuff. So like, I know all those songs super well right now, but eventually like I'll move on to the next thing, and that will be what takes over my listening of my own songs,
Yeah, that's how it goes for me. I put out a record a couple years ago, and you listen to it a lot when it's getting made. And then when it's out, I listen to it a lot. I'm like, hey, this is really good. And then eventually I got tired of it.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's how it works, right?
Yeah.
Like, and of course, you should be psyched on your own record, right? Like, especially like a finished product. It's finally out there in the world now, and you can listen to it and be like, yeah, I'm proud of this. This is awesome.
If you don't like it, why would anybody else?
Exactly.
So for the Coalesce splits, now you did a split with Get Up Kids and also with Boys Sets Fire, and you decided to cover each other's songs. How did you decide to do that?
I feel like that was a Sean Ingram idea. And I know there's some, my memory is a little fuzzy on this, but I know there was some like bad blood around that, honestly. Like, I think it was Sean's idea to do the Boy Sets Fire split first. And it like got delayed for a while or whatever. And like he said, okay, we're going to do this with the Get Up Kids too. We did it with the Get Up Kids. And then we did the Boy Sets Fire one. And the label who was doing the Boy Sets Fire thing was like, what the fuck did you just did this with the Get Up Kids? And Sean was like, yeah, you were taking too long. So we did it twice. I think that's how that went down. But that was Sean Ingram's idea to do that stuff. But of course, like, Get Up Kids are a local Kansas City band too. And at that point in time, like they were practicing at Jess's house. We shared a practice space. So we know those guys really well, and we were listening to them write their records. And we just kind of decided to do it, with friends. I don't know how the Boy Sets Fire thing happened. I think Sean just liked that record or something. Wanted to sing those songs.
The Coalesce interpretation of the Boy Sets Fire song, I forget what the song is called. The I Am No One, I Am Nothing song. That is just incredible, powerful, like really, really good. I have fond memories of, my first girlfriend. I was like getting high and we were like hanging out, and I was like showing her the song, and I'm like, listen to this. And it was just like, it's powerful stuff.
Oh, thanks, man. I know that's something that I haven't listened to in at least 10 years. I don't really remember that one.
Yeah. Well, take my word for it. It's good. It's funny. I hadn't revisited it in a long time either, but I went through this whole life-changing thing, I don't know, 3 years ago, so I revisited a lot of stuff I was listening to when I was younger, and that was one of the songs. So I remember walking to the Blue Line in Chicago and putting that on and just feeling like shit. And I'm like, I have to listen to song after song after song to get me through this. And that was one of the songs. So you should check it out.
I'll check it out sometime.
So I have to ask about the Led Zeppelin cover record. Now, I think I never got into classic rock. I don't know. It just never took. I'm just into all the post genres and hardcore and emo and all that stuff. But I think Coalesce got me into Led Zeppelin.
That's weird.
So
what a long way to walk to get to such an accessible band, dude.
It was right there the whole time.
Yeah. Because we had our friend Brendan on from Circa Survive, and we were talking about that record. And he's like, is that why you like Led Zeppelin? Because of Coalesce? And I was like, yeah, probably.
I know the initial idea for that was we were going to do a covers record of like 70s rock songs. That was the initial thought. And we were going to do, a song by Mountain, a Hendrix song, some other songs. And eventually it was like, which Zeppelin song? And it was like, fuck, 5 of them are amazing. So we were just like, fuck it. It's a Zeppelin record.
That's awesome. And did you ever get any blowback from that?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been long enough.
I think we're in the clear.
I think you're in the clear. It seems that blowback only happens when there's money involved.
Oh yeah, there's no money, so we're in the clear then.
Yeah, like if that record made $10 million, you would have heard something.
Yeah, nobody took notice.
So let's talk about that band some more. Now, I guess you guys broke up around 99, somewhere in there.
Yeah, that seems right. 99.
So it seemed, just reading about the band, it seems there was a lot of turmoil from inside forces and outside forces, and it just seemed like you had a run of bad luck. So what led to the circumstance of the breakup before 012?
So, I think just being around each other for so much time at such a young age when everybody eventually just needed a fucking break, and I think that was a big part of it. Everybody was at different stages of their life. Sean, the vocalist, had a baby at home. Mm-hmm. I was a baby, and and then Jess had like other interests that didn't involve music at all, and it was just too much happening at once. And then we were on a tour, and our van broke down in Idaho, and that was like that was the breaking point. That's when it all went down. Mm-hmm. I think mostly because like Sean, as the vocalist and the young father, was also the band dad, and he was trying to like hold everything together. Mm-hmm. And Jess at that point was like, fuck yeah, that means tour's canceled, I can fly home. And it was just like that was like the worst thing that could have been said, and it was like that was just too much. There was just too much tension that it just finally all blew up and fell apart. Yeah. And Jess and Dan flew home from that spot, which was somewhere in Idaho. And I know that Sean and James and I rented a U-Haul truck and drove everything back to Kansas City, like all our gear. And we left that van. Like we just abandoned it in Idaho somewhere. But like I was like riding in the back of a fucking box truck for 30 hours or whatever,
Oh my God.
It was, but that was tour back then. It was fucking miserable and everything broke all the time. And but yeah, so we got home from that, and we were still obligated to do a record with Relapse, who gave us the money for that van. So like, so we had to do a record in order to pay for that van that was broken and abandoned in Idaho. That's kind of how 012 happened. We didn't even want to write a record at that point, Yeah,
I remember hearing that. This is like before the internet was really a thing. I remember hearing through the grapevine that the band was not getting along, but we have to do this record for Relapse, and we're going to do it.
Yeah, and we put that record together in the practice space. I don't remember if Sean was there too often when we were practicing, or if we were just sending him tapes and saying, all right, here are the songs. And but I know that when we recorded it, we all recorded at different times.
Now, how do you do that?
James and Jess went in and recorded the guitars and drums. And this is back in the day when they probably did that in like 2 days, all the drums and guitars. And then I was on a Casket Lottery tour at that point, and I got home and went in and recorded all of the bass tracks in like 3 hours because I did it during a Casket Lottery session. So I did all the bass stuff and like way too quick. And then like 2 weeks later, Sean went in and did the vocals. And I remember getting the mixes back. I was probably a month later or whatever. And being bummed, like bummed because of how the process how that actually went down. And that the songs were pretty rad, but we missed out on the fun times of being in the studio and recording a record and putting it together properly.
So was everyone that much at odds that they didn't even want to be in the studio together?
I don't know if it was didn't want to be in the studio together. It just didn't need to happen at that point. And, Sean always needed more time to like come up with his vocal patterns and stuff anyway. So it's not like he could have gone in there and banged him out on drum and guitar day,
Right.
He needed to sit with the songs as they were recorded for a while to put his patterns on them. And I was out of town. So, I mean, those are the circumstances around it. But if it would have been more important that we were all there, we would have made that happen. It was just kind of like, fuck it.
Yeah. And well, it's a good thing it did happen because it's a classic record. And that first song I go back to all the time that has the really groovy Zeppelin riff in the chorus. Oof, that's so good.
Yeah. I remember liking like the first 4 songs on that record. kind of loses steam for me like towards the end.
Well, and I was going to say, yeah, Sean, he must have to take a long time with those vocals because it's crazy. It's like an essay, and the patterns are so nuts. I don't even know how he physically does it.
He's a fucking master.
Yeah.
Like, he's the best at it. And yeah, I mean, I don't think he gets enough credit for that. Like, everybody always talks about his voice, and the particular like pitch of his voice, which is unique in its own right. But his patterns and his lyrics are exceptional. And especially like if you go back to before I was in the band and you listen to Give Them Rope, holy shit, that's a fucking masterclass.
I was saying that I think, Nathan, I don't have a MP3 player in my car, so like I just have like I can't plug in like the auxiliary or anything like that, so I just have CDs. And I don't have a long commute to school, but I have like it takes like 20 minutes, and I just constantly change out the CDs in my car. And one of the CDs that has stayed for the duration of me owning this car, so 8 years now, has been Give Them Rope. Has not left my car.
Yeah, I love that record.
It's so good.
Yeah, I can walk down the street and just think of the first song on that record and get hyped up. like I'll get the tinglies down the back of my neck. It's happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't in the band when that record came out, but I was around the band when that record came out, and I remember going out of town with them, and when I got asked to be in that band, like I was so in love with that record that it was, what a thrill for a stupid kid to be invited into that party.
Yeah. So what's it like then being in the band and playing those songs live? Like, I would have just absolutely lost my mind.
Yeah, it was awesome. But you got to remember at that time, like, Jess was always forward thinking, like he wanted to do the next thing. Yeah. So, I did play a lot of those songs with them, but we were talking about functioning on Impatience like pretty much my first day in the band. It was like, all right, the next record though, here's what we're going to do.
Wow. So, when 012 Revolution and Just Listening came out, that was it. The record's out. You guys didn't play again for at least another like 3 years, right?
Right. And in fact, that next iteration of Coalesce did not, I wasn't involved in it, and neither was Jess. There was another tour thing that happened that, how it went down actually is, I was invited to this diner in town. Sean and James said, "Hey, we're talking about doing Coalesce again. Come meet us over at autos. And I was like, okay, cool. And like I show up and I'm like looking around for Jess, and they're like, oh yeah, no, Jess isn't interested, but we wanted to know if you wanted to play guitar and Stacy will play bass. And I was like, no, thanks, but no thanks. Like I never thought that was the right decision. To me, like Coalesce is Jess and Sean. It doesn't make sense to do it without either of those guys. So I bounced. They found another guy to play guitar, and Stacy went back and played bass on that tour. And that was just a tour thing.
Yeah. I remember hearing about that. I was away at college for the one semester I went, and I was like, I need to drive back to catch that. And I didn't. But you know what? It's okay, because I eventually saw you again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was plenty of people who did go to that tour and loved it. And, the guitar player who did play was damn good. It just didn't feel right to me. And I know Sean feels the same way about it now too, like hindsight, right? He made that decision at that point, and then like looking back later, I know he was glad that we got a redo with Ox.
So how were the shows back when you were touring with the band around functioning and after? Because I caught you guys one time back in the day. It was at a Relapse showcase in Philly, I think at the TLA. And I mean, how were the shows? Was there a lot of people there, or did it just depend on where you were?
Yeah, it depended on where we were. I remember that Relapse trip, though. That was with Nile, and they were very excited to be in Metadelphia. Was that that night? Remember that?
Yeah, and Dillinger Escape Plan played, and I think the bass player didn't show up.
Oh, rough.
Yeah.
But we did play, and Neurosis was on that trip as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that trip was well attended, but for the most part, like if we were out on our own and say we were playing Pittsburgh or, somewhere in Indiana, there could be 15 kids there for sure.
That seems crazy to me that like only 15 people would go see Coalesce.
Well, it was pre-internet. That's just how,
That's
shows
how it
were
was.
in those towns. Yeah. That's how it was in Kansas City and still is sometimes, right?
That's the good thing about the internet, is that the legend builds. Like all my favorite bands around 99, 2000 were broken up. Like Texas Is the Reason, Mineral, bands like that. They were legends. They were broken up. I was never going to see them again. And the legends grow and grow. And then you hear about a reunion show happening, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, and it's happened with Coalesce a few times. And you know what? If live music ever opened back up again and Coalesce played another show, it would be there again.
Cool. I don't think it's going to happen, but
now,
cool.
do you say it's not going to happen because of COVID, or do you think there's not more Coalesce shows in the future?
I don't think there's Coalesce shows in the future. I hope that I'm wrong about that. I would love to do it. I just think that some of the other fellows are at different stages of their life, and they're just really not interested in rehashing it. And you got to know when to like step away, right?
Yes. It's disappointing news, but no more shows. But what do you think of maybe another recording at some point?
Maybe.
Well,
I wouldn't plan on. But I've been wrong before. And when the other dude came in and played on that tour instead of Jess, like I would have said at that point, there's no reason Jess is ever coming back. But he did. So. It's possible.
Never say never. That's what they say, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, let's take it back a little bit. So you're in Coalesce, and then you're starting to form the Casket Lottery. Tell us how that came together.
Well, so Stacy Hilt, who was the original bass player of Coalesce, when he left Coalesce, he and I were always in the van, listening to bands like Giant's Chair and Boy's Life and Shudder to Think and Kill Creek. And we always kind of talked about like doing something, along those lines. And when Coalesce started slowing down and eventually breaking up, that's when we kind of got together and had time to work on some of this stuff. So that's kind of how it started. Like I said, Sean was the one who had a baby at that point, and I was still a kid. I was still like raring to go on tour. Like tour was fun, right? So I just wanted to do it as much as I could. So that's why we started. That was the intent, was just to make some music that was more, our own natural writing style, and have opportunities to go out and travel and see friends more often.
Even though I listened to so much hardcore and associated genres, all the heavy stuff, I always wrote more emo, post-hardcore type stuff. So whenever I was starting a band, that's kind of what I had in mind. Now, had you sung in a band prior to Casket Lottery?
No, and that was never the plan. Like, Stacy and I traded off some vocal duty there starting, at the very beginning, but we always thought eventually we're going to find a different singer. We're going to find somebody who can do this job.
Mm-hmm.
But then we just kept going, and we just kind of got past that point. Just never found that right person,
Yeah, and how did you deal with that? Because I put out a record 2 years ago, the first ever where I was singing. I was the front person, and it was fucking terrifying. I never knew if I sounded good or bad. Sometimes I thought it was great, sometimes I thought it was horrible. And in the studio it was a real struggle too. Like some songs just weren't working, and I had to come up with a new range on the spot. How did you make it work?
A lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
But all of those struggles that you just mentioned, like they still happen,
Yeah.
and they're things that I had to figure out, or still figure out, or still struggle with, writing a song in your correct vocal range, like that's something that I did for way too long. And eventually like figured out, I can't write a song in my bedroom because it doesn't translate. Like as soon as you get to the practice space, like you're singing way too low and it sounds boring.
Yep.
Or like you have this grand vision of like how well you can sing, and then you actually belt it out, and you're like, that's not going to happen. There's too many words there, So I stopped writing so many songs at home and did more at practice, at least the initial like vocal melody, and then I knew what I was working with. But to get comfortable with being the vocalist is like, that's a struggle, and I'm not a naturally confident person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like talking on the microphone, in between songs. I'm not that guy, so yeah, it's still a struggle. And, for the most part, I've gotten a lot better, but I've got a long ways to go too,
So how did you improve? Did you ever take any lessons, or did you just talk to people? Like me, I just did it. I just kept doing it until I found something that I felt like worked in my mind, and that was it.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I did was trial and error. I figured out like all the ways that I was fucking up, and like just kept a mental list of how not to do things.
Yeah.
And then I never took vocal lessons. I never really put that much effort into it, other than I didn't want to embarrass myself in public anymore.
Yeah.
So I just like learned lessons along the way and took notes.
Well, I have to say it works, and I think from the very start, it just sounds awesome. Choose Bronze. What a debut. How did it feel to be out on the road, touring, playing that first record? How was the response?
I think it was okay. I mean, honestly, those first tours was all about us just going out and traveling and meeting friends. I don't even remember like ever feeling like, oh, that was a great show that we played on that tour in California. I don't remember any of that. It was just, it was the reason we were in town. But it wasn't about, like an amazing performance. I don't remember any of those happening. It was, and the very beginning of the Casket Lottery, all the shows we were playing, we were working on the next record, like always, perpetually, just, even on that Choose Bronze tour, when we went out, we already had Moving Mountains written. So we pretty much just went out and played Moving Mountain songs and then recorded them right when we got home from tour.
Wow.
That was just like where we were at as a creative unit at that point. Choose Bronze songs were old by the time we were on tour, so we were moving past it.
That makes sense, because I remember you guys back in the day, you would put out material at a pretty quick pace.
Yeah, and I just loved to be in the studio. I loved that process. So, so that was like the carrot, that we were always just chasing. All right, let's write the next thing so we can get back and do more of that fun thing.
That's the best part, is being in the studio. Everything that's been bouncing around in your head, you're finally hearing it come to life. I'll never forget hearing one of the first songs I wrote in this last band come to life. And I was like, holy shit, there it is.
Yeah, right. Or like, do you have that moment from your recording experience where the song isn't how you pictured it, and it's now this completely different thing that you weren't anticipating, and it has this new sound on top of it? Or it's not a heavy song, all of a sudden you stripped it down and it's this other thing. Like, those are the moments too where it's like, that's the creative piece is where I really get off on it.
Absolutely. Or in my first band, the song I wrote, it just wasn't coming. It's a long song. There's a lot to it. It just wasn't coming together, and I was really scared it was going to be a disaster. And then somehow in the studio, it was finished. It all came together. It came out perfectly. So when you throw that Hail Mary pass and it comes out well too, that's a great feeling.
Yeah, or the flip side of that is when you have a great song that you've written that you think is just so great, and it's one of the best songs for this next session that you're going into recording, and then you do the session and you're like, that's the dog. Like, that song sucks. Like, that didn't work at all. These three other songs are way better than that one. I don't know what happened. That happens too.
So how does it feel to be in two bands that are so great? Now, at one point, you could be like, I'm playing bass in Coalesce, I'm out with Coalesce, we're playing Coalesce sets, and then be like, boom, I'm going to put down the bass, pick up a guitar, I'm playing Casket Lottery. Have you ever thought about that?
Well, keep in mind that, like, we're still going out and playing to like 20 people. It's like, it's not in the Foo Fighters or anything, So like, I like the music that I've made, and I like the bands that I'm in, and I like the people that I'm hanging out with, and I'm always excited when other people are excited about those things too. But it's not very hard to stay humble when you're sleeping on wheel wells and the show got canceled in Pittsburgh. You know what I mean? It's
You're still playing you're playing to crowds of only 20 people. I find that hard to believe.
Sure, it happens. Yeah.
Do you ever I always think about this, like, Nathan, do you ever like look online and see like people selling Coalesce stuff and you just go, oh, I should have held on to some more of those shirts? Because it's like, I constantly look for, I found a shirt on eBay probably like 4 years ago, and it was from Functioning on Impatience, and it's the one with the rib cage in the front. And I remember I got it and I was like, oh, that's really awesome. I think I paid like, I don't know, $25 for it. And I remember like I posted a picture of it on Facebook, and I'm part of this like Facebook group called Hardcore Merch, and people were like, I'll pay you $85 for that. And I was like, what? No. I literally just got this. What are you doing? Like, but people go nuts for that. Like the stuff that reminds them of their youth, and it's like they're willing to pay top dollar now because, people have like full-time jobs and they have disposable income, and it's like, holy cow, dude. Like, I just remember buying shirts at shows where I paid, 15 or $20 for the shirt, and then you see them on like these like sites and people are like, yeah, don't lowball me, I know what I got. And I'm like, all right, well, let me look at some of the offers. And you see the offers and people are like $130 for the shirt. I'm like, holy shit. That's the most insane thing I've ever seen. Like, you just don't think about like that type of stuff. Like, cause you think like I associate it with like my youth and like stuff that I loved. And then like, you see people profiting from it, and you're like, ugh, that's something kind of dirty about that.
And I think people need to be better about Google searching that shit, because a lot of that stuff's available still, like somewhere, you can find it. We've got a Casket Lottery Touche Amore split up in our merch store, like still from the first press, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people are like on eBay buying those, Touche fans for like $30. I was like, dude, I've got it for $6 in the fucking merch store. Like it's still the first press, I promise. Like,
I always check the band page, the Merch Now page, the Bandcamp first, the label page. I want legit stuff, because there's a lot of cheap-looking bootleg stuff out there too. So let's talk about the new Casket Lottery record that's coming out. Short Songs for End Times. So when is it coming out?
Release date is November 6th.
November 6th. And we've got 2 singles out now on Spotify. Now, are those on YouTube as well, so Tommy can listen to them? He doesn't mess with Spotify.
Yeah, they're on YouTube, Tommy.
Nice.
That's good. So let's talk about the record. Is there a central theme, or do you take it like song by song?
There really isn't a central theme. Obviously, it's a section of my life.
Yes.
So there is a thread through it all, for sure. But I know that I tend to keep my lyrics and concepts a little bit vague intentionally. I just find that that's better for everyone. I think there's a handful of songs that I've written in the past that are probably a little bit too personal, and like in hindsight, I regret like saying some of the things that I said. I was a little too honest.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to keep things vague, and I also tend to not explain lyrics. I think it's more important for people to get their own meaning out of each song. I love it when people come up and are like, oh, I love X song because it means this to me, and I'm like, holy shit, that's weird. Like, I don't know how you got that, but I appreciate it, and like I would never want to take that from somebody. But yeah, this record lyrically, and we initially, like, the working title was Short Songs for End Times because we thought it was funny. Yes. And by the time we wrapped up, we went into lockdown. I was like, well, we're not changing that. Like, this is
became a little bit more relevant at that point. You're like, wow, this is deadly accurate.
It's real all of a sudden. So just look around America for the last 3 years, and that's what the record's about.
Right. Yeah, I typically write about what's ever going on in my life at that time. The record that I put out 2 years ago, I was horribly addicted to drugs and alcohol for a long time, and I finally got clean and sober and got over that. And it was kind of the story of that journey, getting off of it, going back to it, getting off of it for good, dealing with the after effects, dealing with people after that. It was kind of the story of that whole journey. So what are some struggles you've had to overcome, if you're willing to share them?
I think just being a person, Keith, like, that's an incredible journey you've been on, and I appreciate that you shared it. And, I think that anybody who has to overcome something like that, like, kudos to you. And of course, you're going to write a record about that. Like, what else are you going to write about? Right. Either you're going to write about your personal struggles and your triumphs, or you're going to write about, like, fucking Hobbits or like some other like weird concept album, right? Like, you have to like come from personal experience. And, everybody has stories or struggles or things that they've felt like they've had to overcome. And I think that that's, completely natural to write about, and especially in a band like this where like I've got like 2 volumes and they're both fucking loud, so like I'm gonna be yelling about something. So it's obviously not about how great my day was.
Right. And coming from hardcore and that background, we have to have been through some shit. Like, I never met anybody in hardcore who, I don't know, everything was just okay. They're just doing it for fun.
Well, I think I was half joking when I said it's about being a person, and being a person is hard, but
yes,
that's the truth of it. And, I haven't had any major traumas in my life. I grew up in a completely loving household.
Mm-hmm.
And both my parents are still together. They've always been supportive. But I've still got shit to work out. I've got things that I'm angry about, and I've got things that freak me out. And that's just being a person.
Yes.
I know that there are plenty of people out in this world who have far more damage that they've overcome, in their lives. And I'm not discounting anybody's story, and I'm definitely not putting my struggles up against anyone's.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still real. It's real to me. Everybody's experience is real. And I talk to my oldest kid about this all the time because, it's a heavy time right now. Yeah. And to struggle with depression right now seems completely valid, no
Yes.
matter how loving your household is.
How many kids do you have?
I have two. I have a 19-year-old and a 14-year-old.
My girlfriend has a 14-year-old daughter, and oh boy, it's an interesting situation for me. Her father, sadly, is not in the picture anymore. He passed away from cancer, so it's the mother, and I've been with her for the past year, and it's raising a teenager is hard enough, but I think it's just even more difficult in these times because shit, like you can't go outside, you can't do anything. Everything has to be on Zoom. There's no school. The country is out of control. There's a crazy person in office. It just seems like, pandemic. It's one thing after another. How do you come to terms with all that, Nathan? How do you talk to your kids?
It's hard.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a confusing time. And quite honestly, like before the election of 2016, like we would talk about, what was happening, and my oldest would say, this guy's going to win the election. And I'd say, no fucking way. This guy is not winning the election. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like there's too many people who know better. And then I woke up that next day and shit was different.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a completely different conversation now. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, and you can't always just paint a rosy picture for the kids, it's, especially now. Yeah, it's fucking scary.
It is. And what this whole thing has taught me, both that election and this pandemic thing, is always expect the unexpected. I never imagined that everything would just end, going outside, live music. And I live in a bubble in Brooklyn. Like most people here, most people I talk to share the same mindset. So I was sure the election would not go the way it went. And I'll never forget waking up that morning. I was high and I was kind of out of it. And I heard my roommate upstairs talking, and he's like, I'm just going to pretend that this didn't happen. And I was like, uh-oh, it happened.
It sure did.
Yeah.
And I think, it blew everybody's minds, right? And
yeah.
I was up late election night and watched it go down, and like I didn't even sleep that night, and quite honestly, I haven't slept much since then. Like just to be completely transparent, like it changed my whole world.
Mm-hmm.
Like this was not the place that I thought I was living.
Yeah.
This is not the people that I thought I knew,
Right.
And how like disheartening is it?
I've never experienced that before, where someone will identify with a particular mindset or candidate, and it completely changes my entire view of them. And I try not to get into, I'm never going to talk to this person again and that kind of stuff, because if you're doing that, you're going to severely limit the number of people you talk to. Now, don't get me wrong. If someone is outwardly racist or dangerous to other people, it's not someone I'm going to associate with. But I don't know, man. I just try to, as best I can, I just try to push forward and get along with people and do my part to make sure, I'm helping things as much as I can.
I think this is the thing that kind of got me was
I was with my daughters when we watched the presidential debate, and we were like sitting around the TV and we were just watching it. And my daughters are young, so I have twins that are 6, and we have a baby that's 1. So the baby was asleep. But I remember like, Eleanor looked at me and she went, "Are they supposed to yell so much?" And I'm like, "No. This is not what it used to be." And I say used to be like it's forever ago. One president ago. Right. Do you remember, like, I always thought about this, like, is the president acted presidential. They acted with a certain amount of decorum. Like they held themselves to a higher standard. And now you just go, dude, this guy says crazy shit. Like, I don't know what to say anymore. Like sometimes like people send me like, like memes, and it'll be like, hey, here's a Trump tweet. And I'm like, I have to double check it, because like sometimes I look at it and go, there's no way he tweeted that. And
I just assume it's real now. Okay. And then,
9 times out of 10 it is.
Yeah.
It's really scary, because you look at it and you go, he didn't say. There was one that I was like, look, I'm not the most political person in the world, but he said something like, oh God, I wish I could look it up, but he said something like, look, if you're living in suburbia and living the American dream right now, don't worry. I'm going to make sure everything stays the way it is. And it's like, wait, what? That was a really,
could you not?
That was not very, like when people usually say things and they try to want you infer something, like they kind of dance it around a little bit. Like this was just like, hey, you like the way things going? Cool. I'm going to keep it that way. And I was like, I think a lot of people are kind of upset with the way things are going. Like it seems that literally there's riots happening.
It's been a rough year, dude. Yeah. Read the room, man.
Like, it's very strange, and it's really hard, especially with younger kids. Like trying to explain to them, politics in general and what these people represent. Why do we have this system? And the kids are like, so wait a minute, why can you, these are the only 2 people to pick from? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, is every country like this? I'm like, no.
Yeah. Some countries you only have one bad person to pick from.
I was like, see, I said, sometimes I said, in places like, other places they have representational things where like literally various parties will win. So like they don't necessarily just have, Democrats or Republicans. Like, I think right now in England, they actually have someone that's in the House of Commons that is actually like, is an elected, I think their actual platform is like, they're social communists. And I was like, that seems reasonable. Like people have like the ability to like, hey, I think this guy represents my beliefs the best. I want this person in office. And it's like, yeah, you may not get everything you want, and you may actually not get anything you want, but at least to have a voice that represents what you feel you want embodied, especially in decisions that affect you on a day-to-day basis. It's like, wow, like the whole system seems kind of out of whack. We elect these people that then go do whatever the hell they want. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're supposed to represent me. Where's my part in this? Like, it's that representational republic, or whatever, our actual constitution says is a very strange kind of way to rule a country. And I think now we're kind of seeing, what are the long-term ramifications of having this 2-party system. And it's very,
well, it feels like the end, but I hope it's not. If it feels like end times, like things are winding down. What do you guys think?
I think there is one possible outcome that could be amazing here. Just one, though. I've thought about this for 3.5 years now.
Mm-hmm.
If at some point, and it's got to be soon because the joke's getting old, Andy Kaufman takes off his mask. and he's just like, your all's political system's fucked. I was able to fuck all your shit up. That's the only possible way that this is awesome. Everything otherwise is just as bad as we think it is.
That would be incredible. My secret hope that will probably never happen is that the people finally stand up together and demand real, tangible things. No more how can we afford it? We have healthcare. We take care of people. We smash capitalism. We do away with Democrats and Republicans in our losing political system, and we overcome, like they did in Iceland when the government bankrupted the country and they just overthrew it. I want us to do that. You guys think that'll happen?
I think the biggest challenge with that is there's so many supporters
Yes.
now who, feel like it's their duty to guard the system as it is with whatever automatic rifles they have.
Yes. So many people, it's weird. Like, people will be like, oh, North Korea is brainwashed. But we've been conditioned to believe in this country that if we tax billionaires, it's socialism. No, that's just paying taxes.
Yeah. It's a very strange thing. I actually, I read this whole thing about how they tried this same idea in like the late 20s, where they were like, we're going to raise the income tax on people earning, whatever that amount of money, like billionaires, adjusted for inflation. Mm-hmm. And the people that have made that much money aren't stupid. So they find all these things to shelter their money within. So like whether it's tax shelters or moving their money to offshore accounts or investing in things that are, tax deductible or tax free. It was one of the things they kept pointing to is like, people buy these art collections and, they'll spend 70, 80, 90 million dollars on an art collection. And what they do with it is they purchase it and then they donate it to a museum for a specific period of time, say 5 to 7 years. And then they get that art collection back and they've paid no taxes on it because it performed a public service. People were able to go and look at it for, a certain amount of time. And it's like, yeah, but you still own it. You never stopped owning it.
Remember a couple years ago when that whole offshore network was revealed and everyone was involved in it, and then just nothing happened with it?
Yeah. Remember that time everybody got there was all those hedge funds and the entire banking system went to hell, and basically one guy went to jail. It's like, wait a minute. This whole thing was corrupt from the top down and no one's getting in trouble. In fact, people are getting like payouts and then going on to other careers. It's like,
that's what really changed how I perceive politics and things in this country, that 2008 financial crisis. But Nathan, do you have any large offshore accounts where you're hiding money?
I do not. No, not yet. Not yet. So, not yet. Record's not out yet.
Yes. Soon. So what do you do when you're not touring or writing?
I'm a dad, firstly. That takes up a lot of time. And I'm also a store manager at Whole Foods here in Kansas City.
Oh, nice. How long have you been doing that?
Oh, forever. I first started... Actually, I was with Wild Oats, so there was a merger like 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. But it was the job that I had when I was in town from touring. It was the place that allowed me to leave town for 3 weeks to 2 months and then come back and have a job. And then eventually I had kids and I wanted to be around a lot more. So I just started being at the store more often and moving up. And so I've been with, the company for, I don't know, 15 plus years, something like that.
Are you married?
Yep. Been married for next January will be 20th anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah.
20 years.
God damn.
So did you ever have any hesitation about getting married? Because, I haven't done it yet. I'm 38 now, but I at least consider it a possibility now.
No, I mean, if you did the math, I already told you I have a 19-year-old and I've been married 20 years now. So like there was a moment where it was like, we should get married. And luckily I was already with this amazing person who I wanted to marry anyways. Mm-hmm. And no, it's been great, for 20 years. And of course, 20 years to be with somebody, you go through a lot. You go through a lot of different challenges and different experiences. So, to think that, just because you get married to somebody and you're in love with them, that it's going to be great forever. It's like, yeah, it's great in general.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also like all of these things that have happened in 20 years, between myself and my wife that have been difficult. So 20 years is hard. I mean, it's a big number, and marriage is hard.
What we were talking about earlier, just struggling to be a person, and I struggle with that because most of my difficulties have been around people. Just fear, anxiety. I'm just really nervous in general. Like you mentioned, not a lot of self-confidence.
I have a lot of that.
Yeah, so that's why I got high for so long, to mask those feelings and to give myself the confidence to go out and be the person I thought I wanted to be. And I did that for 15 years. And suddenly at 35, I had to learn how to be a person again. It's like I stopped and I was a 20-year-old again. I picked up right where I left off. And it's, the last 3 years, it's just like learning to be an adult, learning to be a person, paying off debt, learning how to talk to people, learning how to go places without getting fucked up, being in a relationship again. It just celebrated a year together with my current girlfriend. And yeah, there's a lot of struggles.
Yeah, but there always is.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it's
no matter what you're doing or what type of person you are. I guess I shouldn't say that. There are some people who make everything look so damn easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think I don't know much about you, Keith, but like just what you've alluded to in this interview, it's impressive. To do something so drastic and have such a drastic turnaround at that point in your life. I don't think it's very common.
It's not.
Yeah, I think people, ride that wave for as long as they can and then end up somewhere terrible, So I think to recognize that you needed that change and full stop, pivot, high fives, man.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people try to stop and not be able to, and just disappear or die, sadly. And it sucks, but since I was lucky enough to survive and have the life I have now, I don't take it for granted. And I feel like I can do anything now. And that is why we started this podcast. Well, no, not really. This is just this is just one of the byproducts of that.
Tommy.
I have the motivation and the drive to actually do things now, which is good.
I think the other thing with you, Keith, is like you like projects. You you like having something that you're working on. Like Nathan, do you find yourself like immersing yourself in something and then going like I know that I get into something and I get into it super hard, and then after a little while I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Well, that's kind of how I do recording projects, like with whichever band I'm working with. As soon as I know like what the project is and what the plan is, I really I buckle down and get to work and write a lot and demo a lot and come up with the plans. And then when it's done, it's like I do tend to look for the next thing. Like I want to stay busy. I need that thing to occupy that part of my mind for sure.
Yes, same here. And I've done a lot of projects since I've gotten my act together: band, acting classes, play, and now podcast. And the podcast is great because it never ends. And we've made the crazy decision to do it every single week. So we have to produce.
Keith and I both have full-time jobs. So,
yes.
and I have a my family's young. Like I said, I have a 1-year-old and 2 6-year-olds. Like it's a lot of work. The nice part is that with this, we always record at night. So it's kind of like, all right, Daddy's going to go and sit in the basement for a few hours. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Give me hugs and kisses. And they're like, oh yeah, that's right. They like to come downstairs now and help me set up the microphone. And they love that part. But, it's definitely something that, managing time for me has always been kind of an issue. I get really, really into something and I get blinders on and I can't do anything except for that. And then there's other times where I can feel that whatever that passion I had for it is either somewhat diminished or completely gone. And I'm like, ew, I don't even want to spend time doing this. But knowing I have something that is due from it, I'm like, oh, all right, I have this project. Now I have to finish it. Whereas, a week prior to that, it was all I could think about. Like, it occupied every moment of my day. But it's nice with this because it really is it's a break from a normal routine. Like, we get to talk to the people that, make music that we love. And then we get to find out about, like, not like, the goofy stuff. Like, so what was it like to work on that record? Yeah, it's awesome. Like, we get to have real conversations with people. And I think that's a large part of why we love doing this so much, is because it really is getting to know people that have, and I think this is something, Nathan, like, you've profoundly changed our lives. Like, if whether you know it or not, I think that's one of those things that, like, making music like Coalesce and the Casket Lottery have put us in positions where music makes us feel something, whether it's, sadness or anger or elation, but like, we get something from it. And I truly appreciate you taking your time and creative energy and making stuff that we, still look back on and love and continue to make. Just wanted to say really thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because it really is, like, we've been talking about this and saying, like, can you believe one of the people that we've, made music that we love so much is actually going to talk to us, and not somebody we cornered after a show to be like, hey, you made that thing that we like.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate you saying so. And of course, I can be humble because of my own personal perspective around these records that we've already talked about. But I'm a music fan too. Like, I love records by my favorite bands, and I listen to music constantly. So I relate to that. I relate to your sentiment there for sure. And I appreciate you saying so. It means a lot.
Well, that would be a good place to end it, but I'm not going to do that just yet. Because
I just went out of order. I'm so sorry, Keith. I
don't want to let you go just yet, Nathan. So
Fair enough.
Nathan, who is your Coalesce? If you were going to talk to an artist and be like, whoa, this is the person.
Well, my favorite band of all time, and it's always been my favorite band since my sister introduced me when I was probably 10 or 11 years old, is The Cure. It's number one with a bullet. Always has been, always will be. I also really love The Police and Elvis Costello. Like, I feel like that's like my holy trinity there. But The Cure is number one, and I can just always go to any specific era for whatever I'm feeling, and I know those records like the back of my hand. But I love them so much.
Yeah, for me, it's Hammock. It's a 2-piece ambient. What the hell? Post-rock duo. Yeah, and they kind of sound like The Cure at times, and they have such an expansive catalog in different genres. It's the same thing. Like, whatever mood I'm in, I can go to one of their records, and I have it.
Awesome. I'll check that out.
Have you ever heard them?
No, but there used to be a local band here in Kansas City called Hammock. But that's not them, I can tell you.
Check out The Hammock. You won't be disappointed.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And do you have any hobbies outside of music? Like me, I'm an avid retro and modern gamer. I was doing acting for a little bit. That was really fun, but it's not really going on right now. I would love to do music again, but it's just not in the cards right now. How about you?
God, I wish I had a cooler answer for this, but really no. Like, for me, it's all about creating music with my friends. Always has been. And other than that, all I do is work and be at home with my family. But like, I don't even like I don't like messing around with computers. Like, I don't even like recording music, like on my own. Like, I love to be in a studio, but like, for me, it's making music and writing music and putting songs together.
How much touring under normal circumstances, how much touring does the Casket Lottery do?
In 2018, we did multiple laps around the U.S. We've never been to Europe or overseas at all.
Really?
Yeah, never have with the Casket Lottery. I did that once with Coalesce. I feel like that's overdue for sure. And that was definitely a goal with this new record is, all right, we're finally going to go go overseas and support this record.
Yeah.
With like full tour cycles, that was the plan. Fuck. But before 2018, though, we were pretty spotty because different members of the band had kids at different ages, so we're like touring wasn't fun or convenient or possible in some of those years, But 2018, Run for Cover repressed the first 3 records, and we kind of used that as an opportunity to get out and hit the road again. And we did East Coast twice and West Coast twice with all the Midwest stuff in between. And that really, motivated us to write the new record and get to work. And I was hungry for more, I wanted to write a banger and get out and play live and loud.
Yeah, and there's got to be demand in Europe I'm sure you could do some killer tours over there. So, man, I hope that's a possibility at some point.
Me too. I'd love to do it.
Yeah. When were you overseas with Coalesce? Was that during Ox?
Yeah, it was right after Ox came out. I think it was 2009.
Yeah, I caught you guys on that tour. And a typical me story. Tommy's going to laugh at this. I'm seeing one of my favorite bands, and I'm incredibly drunk, and I left the show early to go see a guy about a thing, if you know what I'm saying.
I do,
yeah, I went to buy drugs. And I wish I hadn't, because that was probably my last chance ever to see Coalesce.
Where was that?
In Philly, at Kung Fu Necktie.
Yeah, was that with the Daughters?
Yes.
Yeah.
Incredible show. Yep. I caught at least a third of it, so that's good.
Yeah.
Well, you live and you learn. Well, Nathan, Tommy really summed it up the best. The great part about doing this podcast is getting to speak to our favorite artists, and you're one of them. And yeah, just, so much music that you've made over the years, we absolutely love. So I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to us tonight.
Oh, I appreciate it. That's really kind.
All right.
New record's coming out November 6th. That's it.
All right. Folks, check out the new record, Short Songs for End Times. That's These Times. There's 2 singles on Spotify right now. So thanks, Nathan, for being here, and until next time. There you have it, folks. Nathan Ellis. That was awesome. It's great to talk to legends like that because, 1, the guy has created so much good music, and 2, these guys just end up being really nice and humble. And, well, I guess they would be, because if they weren't nice or humble, they probably wouldn't be talking to us, right?
Yeah, and then the other thing is they probably wouldn't have. I think that type of mentality gets you a lot of places in this world. Like being open to new things. That's why they got to where they got to, because, they're likable, amiable people. Like they get along well with others. So
yeah, and if you're a nightmare, no one wants to work with you. It's hard to get booked. Like the only person who can be a nightmare and get away with it would be if you're like the top of the top,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like people will work with Daniel Day-Lewis because he's amazing, but he's also a pain in the ass. Like
Well, that was awesome. Nathan, we thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
It was just great to get to talk about all that stuff.
Yeah, and I thought it was funny was the the cover album thing. Like he was like just got pissed and was like, "Yeah, we're doing another one." Yeah, that's a really great story because like we always think those things come out like, "Oh, there was like a methodology behind this." It was like, "Nah, like somebody was just dragging their feet." So he's like, "Fuck it, let's just do it twice."
Yeah, and Sean seems to be a very no-nonsense person. Always tells it how it is.
Yeah.
Just does what he needs to do, and I like that. I've always really liked their lyrics as well. I don't know how much you've delved into Coalesce lyrics, but I really connected with them back in the day because they just kind of question everyone's deal and, get into shit.
No, I mean, I never really got into their lyrics except for "You Can't Kill Us All."
Yeah.
Like that one is one of the ones where it's like, the vocals are so up front and it's such a tough guy part thing like to say. It's like that. I imagine that being the line in like an action movie. Like,
yeah. The one time I saw them back in the day, they played that Relapse showcase and The mic, I think they opened with "You Can't Kill Us All,"
Oh, right.
and the mic was cutting out, and you could still hear his voice fill the whole room. It was just awesome. Well, hey, guess what? I went into an office for the first time since maybe February on Monday.
Wow. How was it?
Yeah. It was weird because I typically take the L train and connect at Union Square to get into Midtown.
Mm-hmm.
And usually there's so many people on the platform on the 6 train and the 4-5, just like they're almost falling off the platform. And you have to wait for a couple trains sometimes. No one's there. There's not a lot of people. You can always get a seat. Midtown is still pretty empty. The office I was in, there was 3 people there, and I was one of them.
The lady that works across the street from me, she is the payroll manager for a huge law firm in Philly, and she's been working from home since March. And she said she had to go into the office to get something, like physically get something. And she was like, they literally have a list at the front of the building of who's allowed in the building that day and who's not. Mm-hmm. Like they make a list, and she goes, I went downstairs and I said, hey, my name's so-and-so, and I'm on the list to come in for this law firm. And they went and checked the list, and her name wasn't there. She had to literally call upstairs and go, can you add my name to the list? And they called down to security. I was like, well, at least you know you're safe. Like, at least you know it's not like a ridiculous thing that you're dealing with. Like, they're just letting people in. They're like, oh yeah, go and get your stuff. Like, you don't know.
They do that anyway, because I was at a law firm. I deal mostly with law firms in my position. So if you're not in the system for a lot of these firms, you will not get up. One time I was down there, and it was like it was our first meeting with this new client, a law client in Philly, and I forgot my ID. And I was like, I can't take any chances, because if I can't get into this meeting, my boss is going to kill me. So my brother lives in Philly, and he works nearby, and I'm like, we look similar. I'm like, hey, I'm going to come by. Let me borrow your license for like 2 hours. And he's like, okay. And I get his license, and I go, and I'm like, my name's Keith, and I give them the license, and they're like, this says Kyle. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's my real name. I just go by Keith.
That's funny. Your brother and you do look a lot alike.
Yeah. So I got in. Everything was fine.
That's a good one, man. That was really like quick thinking on your feet too.
Yeah. Anything to not get in trouble at work.
Oh my God. Yeah. Speaking of work, I actually had a conversation today where my supervisor, like the person who's in charge of like all the departments, was like, hey, I need you to call all the students in your homeroom. And I was like, why? They're like, well, we haven't gotten physical answers from a lot of people on whether kids are coming back for this hybrid. So like, that's like where half of the kids go in for a part of the week and half the kids go in the other part of the week. And they're basically online for one day. So the building gets clean on Wednesday. Group A goes in Monday, Tuesday. Group B goes in Thursday, Friday. And he was like, I need you to call everybody. And I was like, okay, so what am I asking them exactly? He's like, basically you're saying, hey, is your student returning to hybrid? And I was like, okay, so what if they're not? How do I communicate this to you? And he's like, well, we're going to send you a checklist, and you just check off, yes, returning. Just let them know that if they start with hybrid, they're allowed to leave whenever they want. So for example, if they start hybrid and, a bunch of cases pop up and they don't feel comfortable being in school, they can immediately go back to virtual. However, if they start virtual, they cannot enter hybrid until hybrid period is over. And I think he kind of messed up, because I was like, well, when's the hybrid period over? And he's like, well, we're shooting for the middle of the third marking period. And in my head, I'm going, that's fucking February. That's a long ass time from now. I was like,
they just keep pushing the dates out. They push it out 3 months and they say, we hope. And then they push it out another 3 months and say, we hope. No one knows. No one knows what's going to happen.
Well, they're letting people into the link this Sunday.
Yeah.
6,500. I think it's 1/10 of the actual seating capacity is what they're doing. So I think it's 6,500 people are allowed in.
One of the things I'm involved with reopened after many months closed. And the space can hold a lot of people, and we're only having 50 in there. and it was a lot of planning to get it open. And it was a trip, man. It's so weird to see people again.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so weird to do something in real life again.
I just, I'm still like kind of like, I want to figure out a way to work from home for the rest of forever.
Yes.
I don't know if the other people have gotten this into their mind, but I am infinitely more productive at home than I am anywhere else.
Yes.
And on top of that, with a little baby at home, it's extremely nice to take my lunch break, walk up a set of steps, and literally make lunch for the baby and sit down and eat with her. Like it's so rewarding. It's like such a nice thing. And I know people like at work are like, I can't believe it. We've been stuck in the house and I want to get back to school and I want to see the kids. And I'm like, I want all those things too. Not as badly as I want to stay home.
I can work from home whenever I want anyway.
Yeah.
But to take travel off the table, to take off-site engagements off the table, to be able to do everything remotely, I love it. But the flip side of that coin is that it's not healthy. Sunday before I left the house, I was freaking out because I'm going to this place, I'm going to be interacting with people, and I knew the next day I was going to have to go to the law firm. So I was like, oh no, it's too much, I can't do it. But of course I did it. And it's good. I need to not be in the house all the time. It's not healthy.
I definitely think it's not healthy, but at least for me, like with like my immune system not being great, I always think about like I just want to make sure I'm like as soon as there's a vaccine available, I'm willing and able to go back out into the real world. But until then, like I just fear like I really do think like if I get it, like because it's so unknown. I've heard people get it and then been like, yeah, it was like a cold. And then I've heard people be like, yeah, I had trouble breathing. I was in the hospital for a couple days. Like
some people say they don't get their sense of taste and smell back.
Yeah. Oh,
can you believe that?
I would. Could you imagine that? That's
no.
like what's her name?
Selma.
It's Selma from The Simpsons because a bottle rocket went up her nose. I'm glad we're on the same page with Simpsons references.
Oh, I'm right on it.
I was gonna see as soon as you said taste of smell or a sense of smell. That's like hilarious.
First 8 seasons, you could say one word, and I'm just like right there.
Somebody said something the other day, and I immediately latched onto it. And it was one of the girls were doing like spelling practice stuff, and they were like learning how to spell different words, and they were doing singular and plural, and it was like oxen, and all I could think of was it's a baby ox. That's immediately what I thought of, and I was like, God damn it, my brain! I'm so like if I could use my brain for like functional things, like things that are actually useful in the real world, except it's filled with Goodfellas and Simpsons quotes. Like,
well, you just need to do those things as much as you watched The Simpsons. When we were kids, my brothers and I, we recorded every episode on a VHS tape, and we would watch them ad nauseum.
Yeah.
So it's just repetition.
It's just, it really is nice. Like that's one of those
like,
things.
Think about it. You've watched Goodfellas hundreds of times over the past few decades. Like if you took a textbook and read it hundreds of times over the next decade, you would be a master in that field.
Absolutely, but I don't have the want or like time. I just don't want that. Goodfellas is like one of those movies I just put on, like even if it's on AMC and it's like halfway through, I'll watch it. I don't really care where part it's at. Like I get excited when I see it. I literally flipped it on the other day, and it was the part where, and I hate this part, but it was the part where Ray Liotta starts getting really paranoid at the end.
Yeah,
and I kind of wanted it. Like I just flipped it on, so it was like, if I'm watching the whole movie and that part comes on, I'm like, fuck this movie. I'm turning this off now. Like, I don't want to watch the whole part till the end.
That's an uncomfortable part.
Yeah. Then, since I hadn't watched all of it, I was like, oh, I'll watch this part. And there were so many things in there I haven't really seen before. Not that I haven't seen before, but that I was like, oh yeah, that's this part. And I flashed back to you sent me a picture the one day and you were like, where is this? And I was like,
Oh yeah.
what are you talking about? I was like, I don't know. Like, where is it?
You were
sent
like,
you sent the picture.
You were like, I don't know, Kensington?
Yeah, it did. It looked like you were under the L. So I was like,
Yeah.
You're Kenzo? I don't know. And you were like, it's the scene where she goes to meet Jimmy Conway and he's like, no, I got some nice new dresses right down there. No, keep walking.
Over there.
Over there, no, keep walking right down there. Past it. What is he? There's like pinball machines in the one room.
Yeah.
It's like guys unloading boxes.
Yeah. They just stare at her. Yeah, it was right there. Smith Street in Brooklyn. So you want to hear a new review of the show?
Yes, please.
This is a good one. From Crexcore, Qual Pod, 5 stars. Here we go. These guys got the chemistry. It gets better every episode. They're like my friends now. I listen to it so much, and I think I want to just go ahead and fix Keith's broken guitars just because I like the guys' pod so much. I would take him up on that offer. Good conversations, good people, personal, quality, funny stuff. Keep it up, Keith and Tommy. I hope Keith passes the PMP. I did, and it was hard. Oh, fuck. I hope I passed that thing, too.
That's December, right?
December 30th.
God damn.
And I haven't gotten to study this week because there's other work stuff going on, but tomorrow I will. And thanks Crexcore for that awesome review. That's really nice. And that's what we want. We want this to feel like friends, you know? Not the horrible NBC sitcom, but like, you know, we're friends. This is something you can tune in and listen to and you have company.
Did you ever meet somebody that's like super into Friends?
Yeah.
What the fuck is that, dude?
The dividing line is, are you a Friends person or are you a Seinfeld person?
Yeah, that can be like a, what did you look at? Was that must see TV? Was that it?
Yeah, but you know, I run with the weirdos and the freaks and those are my people, and those tend to be Seinfeld people.
Yes. I always am like very leery when somebody brings something up, especially at work, when they always ask me about something. They're like, oh, so what kind of movies do you watch? And I'm like, in my head, I'm going, I watch the same 8 movies over and over again. Like, I don't know. I like, movies, it's like action stuff, whatever. They're like, oh, if they mention anything, like this one girl was sitting next to me and she's like, she was really young. Like, I mean, she had just graduated college. She was starting, I think, in one of the lower grades, like kindergarten or first. And she was like, hey, we had to have they gave us a prompt to talk to people around us about. And it was, if you could watch any show for the rest of your life, what would it be? And of course, I picked The Simpsons. I was like, oh, there's a billion episodes. Yes. They're always rewatchable and funny. Like, and she was like, she thought for a second and she was like, I love an older show. And I was like, oh, okay. What? Like Night Court, Cheers, All in the Family. What do you like? And she was like, Just Shoot Me. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like the David Spade show? That show. That fucking like unbelievably like, and I'm probably alienating people right now, but like, I can't, it is such like the most milquetoast vanilla bullshit. Like I've seen those shows and you go, who is the audience for this? Well, it was the young girl sitting next to me with her hair up in a bun. Like that was like that. She was like, I love Just Shoot, but older show. Like I felt like such a tool. I was like, all right, never mind.
I remember when that premiered. I think I watched the premiere, but I'm careful about who I tell about my interests and how much I reveal. Like if I laid it all out, it would be very odd. I mean, imagine someone being like, what are you into? And I'm like, well, I don't watch movies anymore at all. I rarely watch any TV unless I have a day off. I'll sometimes just watch clips of movies or shows I like on YouTube. I primarily watch game streamers and speed runs of old Nintendo games or current or retro games that I enjoy. I do a podcast where I talk to artists in hardcore, post-hardcore, and emo. I don't like comedy at all. I don't like stand-up comedy. I hate sitcoms. I won't watch anything on network television. I only watch prestige, depressing drama. And that's about it. How about you?
So I did. I try to like. I walk a very tight line at work in terms of like what I reveal about myself, especially with like. But I always do talk about like I like heavy. When people go like, oh yeah, he. If you ask anybody at work, they'll be like, oh, he likes like heavy music, like the kind where people scream.
Yeah.
And it came from. I made a big display in the back of my classroom, and I had to find the email. But do you know that line from Throwdown? For myself, for my family, forever. Straight fucking edge. Like I have in the back of my class, like, why do we work hard in this classroom? For myself, for my friends, for my family, forever. And everybody was like, what a great motivational thing. The kids love it. I wrote it like I can kind of do like graffiti box letters, so it like looks pretty cool. And they took a picture of it and sent it out like with one of like the monthly like email newsletters, and they're like, take a look at how some of our teachers are decorating their classroom. And in my head, when I saw that, I was just like, straight fucking edge. Like that's immediately what I thought of. Like, I was like, if they only knew where this stuff came from.
I love that. So you're pushing the straight edge message without anyone even knowing it.
No, 100%. It's funny because the kids will ask sometimes. A lot of them have YouTube channels, and they were having an argument one day in class, and I do a lot with statistics towards the end of the year, and they were like, well, my channel has 800 subscribers, and I have a video that has 1,000 views. And they were like on their laptops, like bringing up their accounts so they could like compare views. And I was like, I win. And they're like, what? I was like, I have a video on YouTube that I like in the band I was in from when I was younger. I think it has like 51,000 views. And they're like, no, you don't. I'm like, yeah, no, I totally do. And I brought up the video, and it's like literally a picture of me, Anthony, and JD, and it's the Say Ocean, it's the Audience of One song, Say Ocean. And they were like, that's not you. And I'm like, yeah, no, that was me. It's
not your video though, so you don't win.
Well, that was their argument then. They were like,
yeah, they're right.
They were like, that's your username. And I was like, no.
800 subscribers? That's way more than we have on our YouTube channel.
Dude, they have my one kid at school. And I'm not going to say his name, but he has, he ranked nationally for RuneScape, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the national like rank people, and he would travel. Like he would get his work in advance for certain days, like Thursdays and Mondays, and he would do these like weekend long tournaments in like Los Angeles and stuff.
I want to meet that kid. If he plays Modern Warfare, I need him on my team. Well, that's it. We're out of time. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks everybody for listening. Tommy, anything you want to say to the people before we shut this down?
No. That was a really good episode, and I'm just so excited we got to talk to Nathan.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's impossible that you don't want to say anything.
Oh.
Like, I thought you were just going to say no, and I was going to be like, what? No. That's impossible.
No. I don't have any profound things to say today. I'm just really glad that I got that news about work, and I don't have to worry about going back into a building and potentially getting sick. That's just great for me, and it makes me feel super happy that I don't have to be exposed like that. And
we can't have you at risk. The show must go on. We need you on this podcast.
You need to write a note to my work.
I'm going to say we're big time podcasters and that you have to stay home and protected so we can keep doing this.
No, please don't ever tell them about this.
Oh, right. Yeah. I forgot it. Yeah, we can't.
Yeah, let's just not mention this at all. I think the less they know about this, the better off we are.
Anyway, thanks everybody for listening, and until next time.